So one of the areas where we're finding that there's a problem with the narrative, the Islamic classical narrative, it has to do with geography. Geography is fascinating because it's not disputable. It is independent. It is neutral. Dan Gibson is a scholar who has been living in the Middle East, and he's lived there for 25 years. And he traveled all through Jordan, and he traveled through the Arab-speaking world, the Middle East, and he learned the languages and met amongst the Bedouin, and he went actually to the areas that he was investigating between 1997 and 2004. What was fascinating is that when he opened the Quran and he looked at the geographical references, there's about 65 geographical references in the Quran, he noticed that none of them made sense in Mecca. For instance, the Quran is very clear that there is a stream in Mecca. There's no stream in Mecca. That the Mecca has all kinds of vegetation. It has trees, loams, clay. It has olive trees. There are no olive trees at all. In fact, the only olive trees that exist anywhere in the world are in the Mediterranean, 600 miles further north. And then he noticed also that the people that this prophet, Muhammad's only referred to 4 times in the Quran. Jesus is referred to 93 times. But Muhammad's only referred to 4 times, so it refers to this prophet over and over again, but it doesn't give him a name. But it says that this prophet 24 times has contact with people from Thamud. 23 times these people from Ad. And 7 times these people from Midian. Well, we know where Thamud is. We know where Ad is. Ad is Uz. Thamud would be the Nabateans. And the Midians are the Midianites. But take a look on a map and see where the Midianites and the people from Uz and the Nabateans, they're way up north. In fact, they're all surrounding the city of Petra in Jordan, 600 miles further north. So then he decided, well, let's go and look at the mosques. And he's been to over 100 mosques, early mosques. Now, the good thing about mosques is you can go to them. Many of them have been damaged. Many of them have been destroyed and rebuilt. But you go to the ones that still remain from the 7th century. And he's been to found 17 mosques from the 7th century alone. This is the century that Muhammad would have been living, that Islam would have begun. And he wanted to find the Qibla Wall, which would be the wall that where the prayers are done. So you always have a wall called the Qibla Wall. You have the Qibla, which means the prayers are always done towards Kaaba, which would be Mecca. And so he wanted to find the Qibla Wall, and guess what he found? In every case, he went to every wall of every Qibla, of every mosque from the 7th century up until 706, which is the 8th century. Remember, Muhammad died in 632. The Qibla was canonized in 624. So we're now in 706. Every mosque that he looked at had a Qibla facing Petra. Now, one of the Qiblas was facing Mecca. Now, these are mosques as far away as in Guangzhou, Canton, in China, Sherban, in Kerala, in southern India. So these are thousands of miles away, and they're all facing Petra, uniformly. Not just one mosque. He went to Israel, he went to Syria, he went to Jordan. Every mosque up until 706 was facing Petra. Then a new Qibla was formed, but not towards Mecca. It was almost exactly halfway between Petra and Mecca, facing but there's nothing there for it to face, which suggests this is a political statement. The first mosque that he could find that's facing Mecca is not till 727. Remember, as I said, the mosques were canonized, the Qibla was canonized in 624. That's 100 years later. So the next big problem is, what are you going to do with Mecca? Well, Dr. Patricia Corona, who is head of department at School of Orient and African Studies, she was also head of department at Cambridge University and also Princeton, and that's where she died when she was head, considered to be one of the world's leading scholars in early Islam, asked this question way back in the 1970s. And she wrote a book in the 1980s about this very question because she couldn't find any reference to any city called Mecca until 741. Mecca is supposedly where Abraham went to in the 1900 BC. Mecca, where Adam and Eve were thrown down to in chapter 7, verse 24, when they were thrown out of our Garden of Eden, which is up in space. Mecca is where Muhammad supposedly was born and grew up and lived until 622 when he moved up to Medina. Mecca was supposed to be the center of all trade, north, south, east, and west. So someone should have known about this place. No one knew about this place. She couldn't find any documentation. Now, this woman speaks and reads 15 archaic languages. She went back to all the language. She went back to all the trading documents. And the first reference with the Apocalypso Continuum Methodius, which was written in 741. The first map that showed Mecca on it was not till 800 AD. That's the 9th century. So I leave a question with you. Is there a geographical problem with the Quran? Absolutely. Proving they've got the wrong man in the wrong place doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Come on home.